Are you a
Do you know
coffee
what?
drinker?
Yes, I do, but I just have one in the morning. Um, but I was just thinking as I was making this, it's like, I did this last year when we were recording a podcast. This is hot chocolate.
Oh,
No, I love me a hot
nice.
chocolate. And before recovery, I would have been like, you can't have a hot chocolate before midday because,
Mm.
it's chocolate. You can't have chocolate. Like, there's something about, like, you can't have chocolate for breakfast, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not anymore, people. Not anymore.
What I had the other day, I'd never had before. Me and some of my work colleagues at midnight had pumpkin spice midnight hot chocolates, and it was really cute. We ordered them into the workplace because we were just really feeling it. And I've never had pumpkin spice hot chocolates. I've always had pumpkin spice like lattes, coffees. And it really worked. It worked better than I thought it was going to. Be honest.
I have never had anything pumpkin spice.
What? You've never had anything pumpkin spice?
Anyone who's watching this on YouTube, you will think that I just said something insane because of Becca's face. The horror on this woman's face. No, I've never had anything but. I don't
Let's
understand what
unpick
a
this.
pumpkin
Why?
tastes like. I don't understand.
Have you eaten a pumpkin before?
No, why would I eat a pumpkin?
What? You've never eaten a pumpkin before?
I'm sorry, but at what point do I sit there and go, oh, I know what I want for dinner? Pumpkin. When do you
Like,
eat pumpkin, Becca?
I mean, I ate pumpkin 2 days ago, actually.
Why? In what context?
Well, I had a pumpkin the other week. I did half of it and made pumpkin soup and had a pumpkin soup. It was nice. And then the other half, I did some roasted, like roast veggies with pumpkin in it and had some like chicken and stuff with it. And then I had some leftovers. So the other day I put some of that roast pumpkin and other things into a wrap and had it as a wrap, which maybe a little bit bizarre, the last one, but it worked. It was nice.
See, like I would do that with like sweet potato and squash, but
What a
never
pumpkin
in my
then. They're like,
brain. Because I think in my head, when I think of pumpkin, I think of carving pumpkins. And that's what I think their purpose is. I never
mm.
ever think, oh, I need to buy that and eat it.
Pumpkins are like very similar to butternut squash.
Okay.
So, do you like butternut squash?
Yeah, Stuart's dad has an allotment and he's growing them all the time. We forever have squash.
So you probably like pumpkin. It's really nice, very similar.
But then, so how did that then go into a coffee? That's like having sweet potato coffee, is it not?
Well, I don't know. You never know. I've had a mushroom latte before.
Is it, that's interesting. Is it like,
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that one.
I won't blame you. Is it like, do they add like cinnamon? Is that where the spice comes in? So is it more
Well, it's
like
pumpkin
cinnamon?
spice. So I think it has a, I don't actually know. I would assume the spices are like cinnamon and nutmeg
Hmm.
and maybe something else,
So it's like less
but it's
really
nice.
about the pumpkin, really.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like you've chucked a pumpkin in your drink. Although I did see, apparently there's this trend that started where people go into like Starbucks with carved out pumpkin and ask for the pumpkin spice latte to be put in there. And this woman did it and they said, no, but I can give you your drink and you can pour it in yourself. So she did that and she poured it in herself and drank it. And she was like, it's wrong. Don't do it. Don't drink a pumpkin spice latte out of a pumpkin because all the little bits of pumpkin were like,
Yeah, that's
yeah. But I can't remember her name. And we'll have to put it in the show notes, but she's such a good account where she basically challenges anxiety through like it's like exposure therapy basically, but it's like through social experiments. So she goes out and does things in public that obviously you'd think, oh my God, people would judge me or laugh at me. I'd be really humiliated. And she does it to prove like, actually, nobody really cares that much. Like the things that you worry about probably like not to minimize them because obviously how you feel is how you feel and that's valid, but to say the things that you worry about happening when you go out in public, like people don't care. So one of them she did was she went into, I think it was like, body care, the shop, but it's like a beauty shop with like loads of like, shampoo, shower gel, all like. And she just walks in and she lies down on the ground, just completely flat, just lies on the floor. And she lies there for 5 minutes to see what happens. Like, does anyone come up to her? Does anyone say anything? Like, and loads of people just literally walk past her. like just literally walk past her lying in the middle of the shop. One person comes up to her and goes, this little old woman is like, you all right, love? And she's like, yeah, I'm just taking a rest. And she goes, okay, good on you, and walks off. And like, that's it. Nobody does anything. No one cares. Another one that she did is like walked into a shop and ordered stuff with like tomato ketchup smeared all over her face, and nobody said anything. She films herself going up to like people and asking them out on dates, and then they like
Oh.
reject her. And like, basically, her point is, it's okay. Like, it's okay. You can be rejected. You can do something silly, and just it doesn't matter. You know, life's not, the world's not going to end.
I don't know how I feel about that. In one part, I'm like, yeah, good. She's right. People are not paying nearly as much attention to you as you think they are. But also, I couldn't.
I'll share the link at the end, like in these show notes. It's I think it's quite fun to watch anyway.
It's helpful, I think.
All right.
So,
Today we are talking about. Well, actually, today, when this is released, it will be around a year since we
will
started the
it?
podcast. Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
How cool is that? Like, I'm so proud of us. I am so proud of us for like,
It's so much goes into a podcast that people who don't know podcasts, and obviously you just don't. I mean, we were the same. You don't realize how time consuming it is.
no, you really don't, do you?
No.
But it's also so rewarding. Like, I love recording with you.
Mm.
And when somebody gets in touch with us and with feedback, that just like makes it so worthwhile, doesn't it?
Because when we're
So if you
recording,
are,
it just feels like we're speaking into the abyss, doesn't
yeah.
it? A little bit.
But to hear someone say, "Oh, I've listened, this resonated with me," or "This is really a light bulb moment for me," that's like amazing. Like well, obviously we don't have a huge following. If you listen and you like us, please leave a review or share with people, because
It goes a
we'd
long
love to
way.
kind of, yeah, it does. It really means a lot to us, and we'd also really love try and spread the word. So if it's helpful to people, that more people can have that too. But I'm just really proud of us just for actually getting through this, because there's been times over the last year where it has been quite testing, hasn't it, to try and fit stuff in.
It's a lot when we've got different work schedules. There's either something going on in your world, something going on in my world. Like, it's so, I think the best thing for us that we've been doing is to just not think too far ahead. And that, I think, ties quite nicely potentially into what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, I thought what is quite nice about today's episode is like, it's been more or less a year since we released it, and we're talking about highs and lows, aren't we, of recovery?
Yep. Yeah.
So it feels quite a nice reflection point. I'm really interested to see what you come up with for this, because as I was reflecting on highs and lows for this episode, found myself like actually kind of resisting the idea of a high and a low, because it felt quite binary, like this is good and this is bad. And I didn't like that, which was quite refreshing for me to hear that as someone who can definitely naturally gravitate to all or nothing thinking. I was like, finding myself resisting the idea of putting something into this category or that category, because I guess my fear was, I think all of these experiences hold some kind of value, and I want to do that justice in this episode, because I don't want it to come across as if like these are good things and these are bad things. Like, I don't want that judgment there. So I sort of landed on, for me, trying to categorize it was like, the lows are the areas that I associated more with shame, more of the shameful things I experienced. And I think it's important to talk about them, because if someone else has had similar experiences, that like talking about things that are shameful helps with shame, right? And then the other side of it, I viewed more as areas where I really felt that was some kind of change or growth or learning, you know? How did you feel about it, and how did you categorize?
I was very similar because when I was trying, I was thinking, and I think sometimes it feels easier in my head. Sorry, Fred's about to jump off a chair onto a photo frame to try and get a bug.
Okay.
Listen to me. So if you hear a crash, it's fine. Because I kind of think of my recovery because I started in January. I kind of think of it as this year-long process with the real
Mm,
like getting, into the deep stuff. Obviously it continues to evolve from there. So in my head, I was trying to think of this like, right, okay, if I can think of it in this timeline, how does how does it look in terms of highs and lows? And at first I thought, okay, the beginning period, maybe the first few weeks to month, was probably the only time where I would necessarily look and think that that was a bit of a high. Um,
mm,
because it started with food permission, right?
right.
But then after that, very similar to you in that when I was writing things down, I was like, it doesn't feel like highs and lows doesn't feel aligned with how I want to portray this. And so
Mm,
instead I made notes for words that felt either side. So like for the lows, it felt like thinking about it more like the harder times, the more
mm,
challenging times, the times that felt like they required a little bit more oomph from me. And then the highs more so like change, like you said, noticing shifts and moments
mm,
where things felt more empowering. And I had glimpses of like what um, food freedom really looked like. And
mm,
it was very less black and white, which I think is great for us because we are
mhm.
leaning away from black and white thinking. So
Yeah.
I think this conversation is less about putting things into that high versus low category and more about exploring like, okay, what does this recovery look like?
Mm,
And one of the most important imperative things that I learned in recovery that I still use now that I think you were talking about earlier is allowing both to coexist. As
mm,
in having a day that having days in recovery that didn't feel good or didn't feel like a high and didn't feel like a low, but I had glimpses of both.
mm.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, I really like, I had my breakfast and then I didn't really think about food until I got hungry at lunchtime. And then I had something and it felt easy. And I just, like, when you can experience what food freedom looks like for you and you can experience that in your day to day, but then also perhaps on that same day being like, but gosh, I feel uncomfortable in my body. I'm finding
Mm,
this weight gain really, really, really hard today. But having space for both of those things to
mhm.
exist within both the high and the low of recovery.
I like that. So that was a real being able to have those days and see both of those sides of it and not catastrophize the sides that felt more challenging,
Yes.
and also not experience any superiority around the things that you feel are maybe more uplifting or higher, something you're more proud of.
Yes. Because I was very used to um, putting a day into a category of good versus bad purely based on
Mm,
food.
yeah. Yeah.
So there's that tendency to want to still do that and
Hmm.
be like, okay, well, unless it felt like a good day all day, then it's not a good day.
Yeah. So moving away from like that categorization. Yeah.
Yes. And even having like seeing my idea of a good day changing that mindset. My idea of a high was no longer about food. Some days, it was just a case of like, I really challenged this belief today around
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
food. Like, I really challenged myself here and I've made it to the end of the day and I'm okay. Like, it
Mm,
doesn't matter what tomorrow is, but today it's been challenging, it's been testing, it's probably felt quite hard, but I've had my own back and I've challenged X belief around food.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's good.
think that's a really, really helpful and really important point to mention here. I think for me, in that kind of area, something I saw a shift in recovery was the not thinking about food at the end of the day when I got into bed, and not like I would lie there and I would visualize like all the food I'd eaten. I'd close my eyes and I'd try to visually see everything I'd eaten to be like, what does that all look like in terms of today's food, to help me decide whether that was good or bad and what the next day would then look like. And something that minimized through recovery, probably because what you're saying here was less about, is it a good day or a bad day? And more about, it was a day. These things happened and these things happened. And I might be able to learn from in some way. This, I'm going to be really proud of myself for, I'm going to be grateful, like show myself like gratitude for being able to do those things.
Yes. Yes.
Because just because something else felt hard, it doesn't mean that the other side of it, the things that I've managed to do, that they should be ignored either.
Yeah. Love that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like when I approached this topic, I guess took it more like specific moments or incidents. And some of them were more actually when I was in the eating disorder, and not necessarily like what you're referring to, where it was the year that I locked in with recovery. Because I suppose I do see that it was a turning point in recovery where that readiness really arrived and I was much more active about my recovery. But I kind of almost see like the whole period of time of having an eating disorder as part of the recovery too. Because I was always trying to like not binge or not purge when I had so many different experiences that I'm sure I learned from, that then if I hadn't learned from those experiences in the past, then when I was in that real active locked in stage of recovery, they still held value at that point, like they all played a role, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think the period of time I was looking at when I was thinking about this episode was maybe bigger than the period of time that you were approaching it from.
I just love it how we just take our own things and run with it.
So the secrecy and dishonesty was something that I noted as a low because it was something that I felt a lot of shame around. And I know we've talked about like binge eating in secret and the shame around that. But what I'm talking about here is that I feel like as I've gone through recovery, I have become more honest as a person and lie less, and there's less secrecy in general, and I'm more authentically who I am. I don't try to hide parts of me. And the reason I class this as a low is when I was going through the eating disorder is because that secrecy that I held around the eating disorder, I see bled into other areas of my life. And I was more dishonest with people and did some things that I'm not very proud of in terms of lying about certain things and being quite dishonest. And I can see how, because there was this big secret that I was carrying around, it bled out into other areas of my life. And I did hide certain feelings and certain parts of me, and it manifested in ways that I didn't particularly, like I held some shame around. And I don't hold shame around them now because I've acknowledged where that came from and what was going on. But I do see that as a low point for me. Does that make sense? I feel like it was a bit wordy.
It actually somewhat poetic, the way that you speak of it, because in that low was you discovering or sort of figuring out your authenticity and becoming someone who can connect with people in a different way and can also show yourself in a different way. You said about the not being honest, but you also spoke about like not being honest about your needs and also hiding parts of yourself.
It was like a dishonesty and a secrecy of not fully accepting myself. And when you don't feel integrated as a person and you're trying to cut off parts of you, like those parts I felt kind of manifested in certain behavior in other ways because they weren't integrated as part of me. So they had to kind of be expressed elsewhere. And that meant that I then did act quite dishonestly.
What I'm picking up on is you keeping parts of yourself hidden, perhaps in a protective way on a subconscious
Yeah.
level. Are you saying like dishonest about who you were and what it is that you needed and what it is that you wanted?
Right. So right, instead of talking around the bush, so one area, one example where I felt shame was, so in relationships in the past, I didn't feel able to like really express my needs, or if I was unhappy with something, I found that very difficult to express that and to ask for something different or to put certain kind of boundaries in place to get those needs met. So instead of expressing that, I like tried to suppress that. That didn't work. So then those needs came out elsewhere, which then was me being dishonest in a relationship.
Yes,
And
I'm with you.
and then I felt that dishonesty was not something, like, didn't feel like it was really me. Like I like didn't feel like I had a lot of integrity. Um and now I've realized that actually, like, having integrity and being honest is something that's really important to me. And that does start with being honest about me and who I am and what my needs are. So it doesn't manifest in that kind of way again, where actually I end up going and that part expresses itself somewhere else and then end up hurting other people and hurting myself. And it spirals into a chain of dishonesty and secrecy, you know?
Yes, got it. Totally got it.
And I feel like that is connected to binging because that's where all of that like secrecy and squashing my needs all kind of started, and it bled out from there. That's how it felt for me anyway.
Yeah, because it does, doesn't it? It bleeds out into other areas of your life. And it does, as you speak of, manifest in a way that meant that you were behaving in a way that wasn't aligned with you, that didn't feel right, didn't feel like who you were.
Yeah. And that's really like jarring to see yourself doing things and acting in a certain way and saying things like that. You're like, that is not me. Like, it is me because I'm doing it. And obviously there's a part that must be a part of me, but that doesn't feel like the best version of myself. Or it feels like really jarring to see yourself capable of doing something that you didn't think you could do.
Yeah, you know what? Now, as you're talking about it, it makes me think of similar situations before recovery when I could be quite, in relationships, quite cutting with comments.
Mm,
And I knew the minute I would say something that I hated, that there was a part of me that's like, I want you to hurt. I'm
mm,
saying this because I want you to feel a certain way. Not realizing at the time that's because that's how I felt also. I also feel like on some level, there was a part of me that like wanted to then feel bad about myself for how I'd spoken to someone.
mm,
We've talked before, haven't we? This idea that like if I can just feel so bad about myself, then I'm going to have no choice but to do something about it. Like it's going to spur me on to make changes. And when I think back to these times in my life where I was behaving in that way, where I was talking to people in ways that, as you spoke of, wasn't a true reflection of myself. They were
mhm,
times in my life where I felt very stuck and like I didn't know where to go, and normally stuck in a binging cycle where I couldn't get my head above water. And of course, within that, I look back now with empathy for myself, and I was carrying so much pain and so much heaviness that I was trying to wade through myself, and I was
mm,
blaming myself for, and I was just feeling worse and worse about myself. And I put that somewhere, and I put that on people that I cared about and that cared about me. And
mm.
in turn, just made me feel worse about myself. As you say, there is something very jarring about seeing yourself in that way and realizing that you are hurting people.
Yeah. What we're talking about, or the way I see it, is that kind of shadow self. You know, when people talk about you
Mm,
have your shadow self, and we all have a shadow self, which is the stuff that we don't like to admit about ourselves, the things that we're like, parts of ourselves that we want to reject. Um, we don't want to integrate into us because we're like, nope, that's not me. I am all good. Like, whereas actually, I saw that shadow self of me come out in terms of secrecy and dishonesty and lies and behavior that wasn't nice. And it does feel connected to the secrecy around binge eating. So for me, anyway, it felt like once I had binged and lied about that and covered my tracks with that, I was more, I'd learned how to do that. And it was easier for me to then do that in other areas of my life because I knew I was capable of it. And the
Yeah.
binging, the secrecy around the binging was a protective thing. And I suppose when I lied about other stuff, it was protective as well. But in one, I was mainly hurting myself, binging, whereas in the other one, I ended up hurting other people too.
Yeah. When I reflect back, that post binge time was when I pulled away from people.
Mm.
There was a wall up. And although there was shame, it was also punishment.
You said that in the past, you had a really like critical inner voice, and we've heard it, haven't we? How it can come out in the way that you speak to yourself. It's really like sharp.
Mm.
And you're saying actually something that you saw as maybe your shadow self coming out was that you were very cutting with other people. Like it's like instead of it being directed at you, it ended up coming out at other people too.
Yes. Yes. Which still hurt just the same, if not more, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's one thing to be cruel to yourself, but now you're being cruel to other people.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible feeling, isn't it? When you know
Yeah.
you've hurt someone. Dealing with so many things at one time in those periods of life when your eating disorder is all consuming and it's so much more than just food, you know? It is your whole life, it is your whole brain, it's all you think about, it's all you can process. And I mean, I'm amazed that I even had any sort of connection with anyone in the first place, to be honest, because I had very little left.
Mm. What else came up for you with this episode around like lows and highs and stuff like that?
For highs, I would say that this is going to come out so corny. And if I was listening to this, I would roll my eyes. It's hard to put it into words, but I remember a point in recovery where it's probably towards the end of that year where I would say my weight started to stabilize. And so I think overall my relationship with food was far more regulated. It wasn't as erratic. It's far more settled. And I remember getting up one morning and getting in the car and driving to work. And I was thinking back to all the mornings that I'd done that and been crying in the car because of how difficult things were with recovery and how much I was struggling with and all this stuff that's coming up. And I remember driving to work and just having this feeling of this real, like, I am so coming back to myself in a way that I've never ever experienced before. And I would hear my coach talk about that sense of self and that feeling of safety and that kind of groundedness that you can only articulate in a certain way. It really is a felt sense, isn't it? Like, unless you really experience it for yourself, it's so difficult to portray it. But I remember driving to work and just feeling this sense of contentment without it being attached to anything, without it being like, oh, I feel really good because the scale said this morning. Or like,
Yeah.
I've been really good on my diet and I managed to do the gym. Like, it was not as a result of an action. It was just a content in this moment, in this 10 minutes of driving to work of like, I am okay as I am. And I am not trying to control my weight and I am not over exercising. I'm not identifying with any of that. And like, oh my gosh, is this what it feels like to be at one with yourself and to feel actual safety in yourself without feeling like your love and your acceptance of yourself is conditional and this constant seeking of something? You know, it's like this proper attunement that I felt with myself. And as with anything, it's not something that lasted all day or any, but it really gave me this thing of like, I've experienced this. The expectation isn't to have this all the time, but this is here. This is here for me. And it's something that is so simple and somewhat insignificant, but was so meaningful for me in that moment.
I felt so emotional as you were talking about that. Like I
Yeah.
genuinely like genuinely welled up quite a few times, and like could feel myself having like goose pimples as you said it. I just so wish you weren't over a screen because I just really want to hug you.
Oh, bless you. I'm glad I portrayed it. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about, don't you?
yeah, I know that feeling, and it's I just as you were saying it, like I just really felt it from you, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt like it is a kind of like inner peace or contentment that's is really hard to put words to, and I think you did a really good job of putting words to it. I felt like you might not use these words because I know we land differently on these things, but it felt like a spiritual experience that you were describing, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I know what you mean because this is why I said to you, I
Mhm.
was like, this is going to sound airy fairy because you can't put it into a word and it's an experience that's going to look different for everyone. And it happened
Yeah.
in the most insignificant point in my
Yeah.
life. I'm literally like driving to work.
But sometimes you find those moments in simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's the whole point,
yeah.
isn't it? It's stripping everything back, which is the whole point. That's what I wanted to do in recovery. I was like, I need to strip everything else back and see what I'm left with.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
What about
what
your
a beautiful
highs,
experience.
Becca?
Well, one of my highs um, does involve having a similar experience to that. So one moment of recovery that I class as a real high where I noticed there was real change in how I felt about myself. This was less about food, this was more body image, was when I had my breast implants removed.
Mm.
So I had breast implants for about 6, 7 years, not sure. And I got to a point in my recovery where I could feel this real like pull in me that I need to get rid of these and need to have them removed. Now there was some health reasons that helped to nudge me in that direction to actually get them removed. But before that, there was this bubbling feeling of it doesn't feel right for me to have these implants in when I'm doing all this work around accepting myself. And yet I have this part of me that is inside me that isn't me. And I felt like every time I looked in the mirror, there was this disconnect for me anyway, in being like, that's not me. That's not fully me that I'm looking back at. And I want to see fully me. And I'd had loads of piercings over the years and I gradually got rid of all of these like piercings as well. And had been part of like, let's get rid of them so I can see me. And this felt like a really big step in doing that. So I got them removed. And in that whole process, there was lots of moments where I noticed mindset shifts. So I had to weigh myself to have the operation because I had to do that to know like how much anesthesia you needed and things like
Mm.
this. And at this point, I'd actually not weighed myself in years, right? So I had no idea what I weighed. I'd got rid of the scales and I had no real reason to bring them back into my life. And I went out to the shop and bought scales and brought them home rather than going to like a gym and doing it because I
Mm.
wanted to do it in the comfort of my own home in
Mm-hmm.
case there was a reaction to it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to feel like in a safe place, which I also knew was then a little bit tricky because I'd also have the scales in the house. So it would be there rather than like, okay, there's a one place. But that's what I landed on. I'm going to buy the scales. I'm going to bring them home. And I weighed myself. And my weight was much heavier than what it was when the last time I'd weighed myself, before the whole active recovery period. And I looked at it and I was like, well, that doesn't mean anything. And that was really, wow. Gosh, that is a mindset shift for me because I'm looking at this way. I can see it's changed and I'm not attaching to it. I'm not attaching my self worth to that. I'm just accepting it as it is. And that's okay. And that was really powerful and actually surprised me because I was prepared to be like, right, this could be a big reaction. If I have a big reaction, this is what I'm going to do to look after myself. Like I was prepared for it to be something that might have been more monumental than it was. But it was monumental, but in the other way around, you know. Um, um, so that was one moment, the whole breast implant recovery. That was really special. There was also something about actually taking that step to get them removed that really felt like an act of self-care because these implants were purely for aesthetic reasons, but there was some health issues that they could have been causing. Um, to go, actually, that's more important to me to look after my health and my longevity is more important than how I look was also a mindset shift that I realized because I've not had that before. Usually,
Mm.
I'd exercise for how I'd look. I'd not exercise for health reasons, or fitness reasons or anything like that. It would just like, yeah, I want to look a certain way. So to prioritize my health over my appearance felt really like really caring towards myself. And it also felt like similar to this, like kind of like what we were talking about before, like having integrity and honesty and being integrated. It felt like getting rid of my implants was having integrity in like um who I am as because I was already running my Binge Free and Beautiful page at this time and I'd been putting like recovery content out there. And it kind of felt like this isn't how I would feel for anyone else, but in me internally, it felt a bit like it doesn't feel like I've got a lot of integrity to be talking about body image, like body acceptance and body image healing when actually I'm still carrying around this part of me that actually I don't know if I do fully accept this part of me because of them seeing what it looks like just me. So it really felt like I'm gonna step into living in alignment with what my values are and what I'm speaking about here. And that felt um really quite well, yeah, powerful to do that and a bit scary, but it felt strong.
It definitely
And then
sounds empowering the way that you're talking
yes,
about it.
that was it, empowering. And then the final thing was after I had the operation, I was aware that obviously it's going to be a sudden change. I had
Mm.
breast implants in and now I'm going to wake up and there's not going to be there. And I was part of like these online forums with people talking about it just so I could learn more about it. And I looked at people's explant results of what they look like before and after, all to try and prepare myself for what I was going to expect because it's a big change to go through in your body. And when you get breast implants removed, obviously like the skin has been stretched, the breast has been like misshapen to put an implant in, and then you take the implant out. So your breast is misshapen. It doesn't just go back to looking like a normal breast. The skin is kind of like stretched, the nipples a bit funny where it sits and that kind of thing. And obviously you've got scars. So I was prepared for this. And I remember like um I think it was like literally later that day, the next day we took the bandages off and you could feel like this, oh my God, like the nerves in your stomach, like the butterflies of like, how am I going to
Mm-hmm.
respond? And I took them off and I just looked at my breasts, which were much smaller, all misshapen and weird. And I just like cried with this feeling of like, I am home. That's how it felt. It was like, I have come home to myself. This is me. And again, I didn't expect that. I expected a stronger response to it in a kind of a judgmental or a negative way towards myself. And it wasn't there. It was just pure acceptance and love and contentment for myself. And even Will commented on it because I didn't see him for a couple of weeks. So I went back to my mum so she could look after me after the operation. And then I saw him and I was like, do you want to see my breasts? And he was like, really? You want me to see them? And I was like, yeah. And I just wanted to show him because I was like, I want you to see me. Like, I want you to see me, not the implants, just me. And obviously I showed him my breasts and he was like, I am amazed because he had fully prepared himself to be like,
Mm.
I might not see, I might not see you naked for like a long time now because you might want to
Yeah.
I thought you might,
Yeah.
he thought that I was going to have that kind of reaction. And even for him, he was like, wow, this is incredible to see you are just accepting yourself like this. So that was a real high. That was a real high for me.
We are totally in the fields in this episode, are we not? Like my hand's been on my heart for the past 2 minutes because, oh my gosh. Do you know what I also noticed in your stories? How you, like, in both instances, you prepared yourself for the worst and you surprised yourself. And I love that. I
Yeah.
love it when that happens. I love it when it's like, I've got my tools in place. I'm doing everything
Mhm.
I can to make sure that I am equipped in this. And then you surprise
Yeah.
yourself. And actually, you're
Yeah.
okay.
Because I think there's also this like, it felt like I'm going to prepare myself because if my response is, however, still got my back, still going to
Mm,
look after myself. I
yes.
think there's something powerful in that. It's like, I'm not going to abandon myself. So if I took this bandage off and I do really dislike what I see, or I weigh myself and I really feel panicked about that, I can survive that because I can
Mhm.
look after myself through that. And that's that kind of being there for yourself, not the self abandonment that you mentioned.
Yes. I think this is probably what we're both talking about here. The high in recovery, the real shift that I noticed was my responses, the way I
Mm-hmm.
handled situations that maybe didn't go how I'd planned, or I'd
Mm-hmm.
had a reaction that was unsettling. It's that act of holding my own hand, which I would do in practice visually. So weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's so the sense of feeling united that it's not about controlling outcomes. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about navigating things perfectly and making sure that I am always aware and always preempting things. But it's this knowing that no matter what, I've built this relationship with myself now that I will always have my own back. I'll
Mm-hmm.
always have me. And I mean, if you'd have
Yeah.
told me that years ago, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend what that's like because, like,
Mm-hmm.
well, of course I have me. I am me. But it's like, you don't realize how much you didn't have your own back, how much the inner critic and the berating yourself and being horrible to yourself and thinking less of yourself, how much that impacts your day-to-day life and the way in which you navigate the world until
Mm.
you bring yourself back. And I say bring
Yeah.
myself back. I don't think I ever really was there in the first place, but I've cultivated it for myself. This
Mm.
being with myself in a way that's like, no matter what, I'm standing by my side. I don't have to like things. I don't have to agree with everything. I can still have regrets and I can still be disappointed, but it no longer turns inwards.
Mm. You're not walking around rejecting part of yourself anymore. You
No,
you have that
exactly.
unconditional acceptance.
I
Doesn't
know.
mean that there's not areas that you might want to change because
Hmm.
that's it's life. I think actually it's healthy to be like, yeah, I want to evolve as a person, but I can still accept myself right now as I am, however that looks right now.
Yes, exactly that. And this is slightly off on a tangent. I don't know whether you've seen this because Sarah posted it on her Instagram yesterday. I don't know whether you saw um,
Yes, the
that
AI
AI
thing.
thing. Yeah. So I did it yesterday
Did
and
you?
I felt a way about it.
Should we
Being
clarify to
like,
the listeners what it
oh, yeah,
is?
sorry. Sorry. Basically, there was this AI tool that you upload a photo of yourself, your adult self, and then a photo of your child self, and it merges them together like you're hugging each other. And I mean, I will say my sister did it, and I don't know what they did, but it looked horrendous. It did not work. But mine looked really sweet and it felt really significant because the only picture I could find on my phone was me when I was probably about 3 and I'm eating ice cream. And there was this
Hmm.
like running joke that in all the photos of me as a child, I'm always eating. And there was something about me as an adult and I've got my younger self on my lap and my younger self is eating ice cream. And there's something that felt really like you were about to embark on some really, really hard stuff and you had no idea, but we've come out the other side. Do you have to do it? You have to do it.
I haven't done it yet, but I've seen
Wait,
it and I'm like, oh, I would like
so
to do that.
sweet.
I think like
It's
the
amazing what
therapist
comes
in me
up.
is like, oh, I think that'd be so good to do like inner child work with that.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. It was again that feeling of real connection to myself and my younger self and having that compassion in a way that I've never really been able to access before. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, that was me going
Hmm.
off on a little tangent there.
Well, I think that's really really nice. Is there? Was there anything else that came up for you around this episode?
I think that was sort of it. I like where this conversation has gone.
Yeah, me too. There was only one other thing I really wrote down, which
Yeah.
was like a high and a low, bit like what you
Love
said.
that.
You know,
Yeah.
bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a binge, and this was like years after. So let me try and think about it. So I've probably been like what I would class as recovered for like getting towards 6 years, right? Um, and this was about maybe like 3 years into that. I had a one-off
Mm-hmm.
binge that just came out of nowhere. Like I hadn't been binging regularly on a regular basis for years. Body image was comfortable, acceptance. Like this was after I'd had the implants removed, everything, and I'd been like working in this world as well for a good few years. And I remember I was driving in my car, and we pulled into a service station, got a load of binge food, got back in my car, and I just carried on driving and binging, which is something that I did a lot in the past when I was binging. And it like really outside of the actual binge experience and afterwards, it really threw me because I was like, wow, okay, I haven't done that in a really, really long time. There's no restriction going on here. So this is purely obviously an emotional binge. And initially, so my initial reaction to it was, I'm a fraud. I'm a failure. Like
Mm-hmm.
I talk about this stuff, I talk about recovery um, and then I've just binged. Like, what a fraud I am. And like maybe all of it, I like started to go into that whole, maybe all of this stuff that I talk about, maybe I don't actually have a clue what I'm talking about. Maybe it was all just a mask for the last couple of years and actually haven't really healed anything. And, starting to go into that catastrophization. And then caught myself doing it and was like, okay, let's step back. So we've had a binge. That doesn't mean you're a fraud. Like you have this experience. And I strongly believe that even when you can be recovered, if you've learned something, that there is an area that's like something that your brain and body has learned as a way of looking after yourself. So it's something that I will probably have to have more conscious awareness around than someone who's never binged before,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so stepped back and was like, let's try and view this compassionately. Like, what's going on? What's going on for you at the moment that could have maybe triggered this? Like, what are you needing in life that you're not getting right now? And did all of that kind of, let's communicate with the binge. The binge is here as a signal. It's telling you that something is not right. And actually, I should be really grateful for that, because the fact that I have this history of binging and know that's what my body and brain does as a way of trying to cope at times is really useful, right? It's useful because if I didn't know that, if I didn't have that, um, like it makes me think about, I don't particularly like this person for many other reasons, but like I watched a video once where Russell Brand said, if you're a heroin addict, great, you know what your thing is. Like you know what your area is, and that's a signal for you. And I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of took that and was like, yeah, I know that binging is a thing for me. So I can use this right now. And it made me realize that actually the reason had that binge was because I was incredibly stressed. I was incredibly overwhelmed. I was taking on too much for myself. I was getting close to burnout. And this had all been accumulating and I wasn't looking after myself, basically. And once I realized that, I then made some changes in my life to look after myself. And it never happened again. And it hasn't happened since. And that was nearly 3 years ago, right? And for me, that was like, that was a roller coaster, because I was like, all these big feelings came in first and wanted to dominate and take over. And maybe if I just suppress it, and it could have been the gateway for that binge restrict cycle to start again. But because I was aware of that, I then went into like, what's going on? Curiosity. And it helped me. And actually, I'm very grateful for that binge because it actually helped me look after myself moving on from there.
And do you know what? The way you're talking about it, I'm thinking for myself, like how I would feel in that situation, and the way that you were able to approach it in a different way, and how that in and of itself creates a different setup for your system, doesn't it? I want to speak for myself, but I'm sure people will relate. When you struggle with binge eating, you're kind of in this anticipation that another binge is just around the corner, right? There's like this, even when things are going well, it's like, oh, but how long is this going to go well for? Because at some point. And so,
lack of self-trust, isn't there?
yes, absolutely. There must have been something for you in that moment that must have felt incredibly, well, not necessarily that moment, but after that moment, that must have felt incredibly empowering because you must have rewired your system in a way that's like, it's okay if I binge. That's not something I need to be scared of anymore. Even though it happened 3 years after and I'm recovered and probably didn't think this was ever going to happen again, it's happened. And guess what? I'm okay. I've come out the other
Yeah.
side and I've got this as information and I don't need to be scared of this anymore if this happens again because I know that I don't have to feel the same way about it.
Yes, absolutely. It comes back to what we were saying of like, I've got my own bath. Like I'm there for myself. The way I related to the binge was different. Yeah. Like the knee jerk reaction was to want to relate in the old way that kept me stuck in the cycle. I think that's really natural. And then that changed. I had the ability to then relate to it differently. And it felt like a moment of humility, like I can talk about this stuff and instead of viewing myself as a fraud because this has happened, actually, this is a moment of humility to be like, I'm not above that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's still a part of me. And actually, this is a really good learning experience for me, for my own personal growth, but also for me, like, in this work as well. Like, having had that experience keeps me connected to what it's like to go through that. And I think that was important. So yeah, it was a high and a low wrapped up into one, and I feel strangely grateful for the experience.
I think that was very impactful. I think that was an impactful way to conclude this episode because you bring it back to what we talked about at the beginning, the highs and the lows coexisting together.
Yeah,
I like that. We come full circle.
we have. Oh, I've really enjoyed this episode.
It's been good, hasn't it? I think it's been very heartfelt, very emotional.
Yeah, it's been quite emotional.
It's been a good one.
Yeah. Well, I don't feel there is a takeaway for this one, so I won't do that. Guess we'll wrap it up there.
Catch you in the next one.